This presentation is all about research writing. I am extremely proud to say this is a first of its own. Hello everybody, welcome, and I trust we are all well, safe and healthy. Are you planning to or busy working on an owner's thesis, master's thesis, doctoral dissertation, journal research article, or some business research output? If the answer to this question is yes, then this presentation will put the light bulb on and brightly illuminate your journey towards the attainment of your desired objective. Hello everybody, it's great to be in your company. But before I delve into the presentation, I think and I know it is essential and important for me to introduce myself. Right. My name is Dr. Noah Kaliofas Marutlulle. I prefer to call myself a general academic practitioner. I am in essence a doctor of administration in public administration. I am a hardcore philanthropist. I co-founded with my wife Maureen an organization called Kaliofas Africa Foundation. This organization is a charity organization which looks at the interest of the desperately needy communities and to assist them with whatever they may need to have a lease of life, at least a lease of life. I am chairman of this organization. I am also founder and chairman of Home of Research. Now, at Home of Research, we conduct various types of research that are hot topics. We look for hot topics and we research on them in the country and also around the world. For instance, the coronavirus. So we look for those elements that need to be investigated on from a research perspective, and we do exactly that. I'm also a founder and chairman of the South African Students Awards. Now, at the South African Students Awards, we award students that would have achieved best results in their final metric exams. So we award them, we give them bursaries, and we give them different types of rewards to motivate other students to be at that level. Now, I'm also a board member and director of the Institute of Credit Management of South Africa, known as the ICM. I am an academic supervisor for honors and master's students. I also mentor doctoral students. I am a member of the Institute of Directors of Southern Africa. I am also an author. I've written books, the likes of It Never Rains, Research Writing, Accounting for Real Beginners, and a variety of other books. The list goes on. I also write, I read, and review journal articles for various journals in the country and also internationally. The list goes on. If I'm to cover all my credentials, it'll take us forever. Now, in terms of the presentation overview, I think it's quite very important for us to look at the presentation overview. This presentation is on research writing, and it is aimed at anyone studying or intending to study research at any level, or those that are research aspirants. If you aspire to be a researcher or to be into research, this presentation is also for you. Now, in the presentation, I'm going to explore all areas pertaining to research writing, with particular regard to a thesis or dissertation and challenges that are commonly encountered in the process. The presentation will be split. It's not just going to be a one long presentation. In the best interest of time, I'm going to split the presentation into several episodes or series. Now, the series will be of about 30 to 40 minutes per series. That's quite logical. That's quite reasonable, if I may say. And each will inculcate the research proposal, the chapters that are introduced or that are involved in research. For instance, if you look at what we talk about when we talk about the introduction in terms of the actual research or thesis or dissertation, the introduction will be your chapter 1. So the presentation is going to look at all these in a logical order. Now, I'm going to look at chapter 2, which is the literature review. That's after the introduction, after chapter 1. I'm going to go to chapter 2, where I'm going to look at the literature review. Then chapter 3, the methodology, findings or results, that will be chapter 4. Analysis and discussion of findings, I'm going to cover them in chapter 5. And chapter 6 will look at the summary, conclusions, and recommendations. As aforementioned, I will tackle these one by one in separate episodes, which will be conducted in a methodical or logical order. It is crucially essential, very, very important, to state that this presentation is an excerpt from my book, Research Writing, a comprehensive guide for the aspiring researcher and the research student. If you want to have your copy or a copy of this book, you can send a WhatsApp message or a text message to the number 072-807-6509. I will repeat, 072-807-6509. Now, in terms of the content that will be in the presentation, I've spoken about it. Chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Chapter 1, in essence, when we look at the details that I'm going to cover in chapter 1 is the introduction. And in the introduction, I'm going to look at issues to do with the background of the problem. Maybe you know, maybe you might not know, that for a research to be there, for one to conduct a research, there has to be a problem. Now, in chapter 1, I'm going to look at the background of the problem. That will be my point of departure. From then on, I will look at the statement of the problem. We'll discuss all that in greater detail. Then we'll look at the aim and objectives of the study. I'm talking about the aim and objectives of the study. Then we'll look at the hypothesis or questions that will be answered by the study. We'll then look at the significance or importance of the study. Definition of terms will also be covered in this section. And when I talk about definition of terms, I'm talking about operational definitions. Then I'll look at the assumptions of the study. From then on, I'll look at the limitations and delimitations of the study. After that, I will build up, I'll conclude chapter 1 by looking at the organization of the study. That will be your chapter 1, the introduction. Then I will then go to chapter 2. chapter 2, which is your literature review. And as I go through that chapter, I will be telling you and getting you to know that the literature review is a comprehensive summary of previous research on a particular topic. Now, the literature review surveys scholarly articles, books, and other sources relevant to a particular area of research. Now, it should enumerate, describe, summarize, objectively evaluate, and clarify this previous research. That is your literature review. We are going to be looking at that, and I'll also be talking about elements that pertain to the fact that in your literature review, that's when you come up with your theoretical framework. All that will be covered when the time comes. Chapter 3 is going to be the next chapter, and chapter 3 talks about the methodology, and the methodology is the approach which one then decides to take in terms of their research. And when I cover this chapter, I'm going to be looking at the research design. I'll also cover the data collection techniques, data processing and analysis. I'll also look at the pilot study. And by the way, the pilot study is more like a summary of your main study. Maybe it might be a bit useful or helpful to explain the fact that your pilot study is the mini global study that you will be conducting. I'll also look at the population of the study, which talks about the participants in the study. I'll also cover sampling, these sampling methods, but first we'll look at what sampling is all about, then we'll go into the methods of sampling. Then I'll go into the ethical considerations. Now, ethical considerations, we'll be talking about issues to do with your informed consent and all the other elements. We're also going to be looking at the reliability and the validity of this study. That will be your chapter 3. From chapter 3, we'll then look at chapter 4, and chapter 4 talks about the findings or results of the study. Now, when you talk about the findings and results are just one and the same. The word or the term findings pertain to one who is doing or conducting a research that is more exploratory. A research that is more exploratory, also called the qualitative research, or using the qualitative research approach. Now, when you're using a qualitative research approach, they're called findings. But when you're doing a quantitative, which is more statistical, quantitative, we will talk about results. So findings and results are just one and the same. Now, in chapter 4, which talks about this section, the chapter 4, we'll talk about the findings. And when we talk about the findings, we're talking about findings based on your study and based upon the information that you'd have gathered as a result of the methodology or methodologies you would have applied. Now, the findings or results section should simply state the results or findings without bias, without interpretation, and they must be arranged in a logical sequence. So the way the findings would have come through, that's how you reflect them in chapter 4, which then leads us to chapter 5. Chapter 5 is for the analysis or discussion of findings, or obviously all the results. Now, this chapter will describe the analysis of data, followed by the provision of a discussion of the main findings from the research, and where applicable, it will link the literature to the research outcomes. The findings relate to the research questions that guided this study. As I indicated earlier on, we're going to look at the research questions when we do chapter 1. And then we'll go into chapter 2, which is the literature review. But when we also look at chapter 3, which is the methodology, we'll also be guided in our minds as we do that, as we write, as we work through those sections. The research questions must always linger in our minds. So that basically will be your chapter 5 analysis and or discussion of findings. Then we come to chapter 6. Chapter 6 is going to be your final chapter in your thesis, in your dissertation, in your article, or in your paper. Now, the purpose of this chapter is to sum up your study, including key points of your discussion and the significant outcomes of your investigation, to draw conclusions and to make recommendations for present and future research based upon your findings. Essentially, its function is to round off the story of your study. So that's basically what the function of your summary, conclusions, and recommendations, or chapter 6 would be, to round off the story of your study. Now, I'm also going to look at a certain section as I go through research writing or this presentation. In the episodes that I'm going to cover, I'm going to look at what are called hygiene issues. And when I'm talking about hygiene issues, I will be talking about, depending rather on their magnitude, these hygiene issues are petty issues that impede on the cleanliness of your research output. For instance, poor grammar, poor sentence construction, and poor punctuation, and others. That's just a wide variety of hygiene issues that I will cover with you. And lastly, we're going to look at what are called the learning outcomes. Now, when I talk about the learning outcomes, it's quite very exciting, very interesting, because learning outcomes are not part of research writing, but they talk to what difference this presentation in its totality or individual episodes would have made to you as a researcher, or as a research student, aspiring researcher, or just an interested party leaning more towards what you would have taken out of them. In greater essence, I'm talking about the key takeaways. Very, very important. Now, that then concludes this section of research writing. In our next episode of research writing, I'm going to look at what research is. I'm going to look at the definition of research, getting you to understand clearly what research is all about. That will be defined in the next episode. And after that, I'm also going to look at what the purpose of research is all about. We may know, maybe we may not know, that the main purpose of research is to inform action, to prove a theory, and contribute to developing knowledge in a field of study that I am going to cover with you in the next episode. I'm also going to look at the differences between a thesis and a dissertation. In some universities, dissertations and theses are seen as the same thing. However, there are a number of differences between the two. I'm going to be tackling those differences. Now, you know that a thesis and a dissertation are terms that are used interchangeably. Is that right? Is that wrong? Let's wait to see. Let's cross the bridge when we get to that bridge. I'm also going to look at the stages of research writing. I'm going to cover those stages of research writing. We know research writing comprises so many different stages. Research is generally portrayed as a multi-stage process that must be followed in order to undertake and complete a research project. Although each research project is unique, in its uniqueness, or in some ways, all research projects, regardless of phenomenon being studied, evolve or involve the same stages. And these are the stages that we are going to cover in the next episode of research writing. Now we I think after this one, we're also gonna look at the research proposal in its totality. But ladies, gentlemen, all the viewers out there that have taken time to be with me today, I really need to thank you so very much for making time. I really appreciate that. Let's get together again in the same place, at the same place, in the near future, when I look at the next stage. But thank you so much for being around. Thanks for your support. Thanks for everything. Keep your message coming. Keep them rolling. Thanks so much, and all the best. May God bless you abundantly. I love you. Cheers. Bye.